Hi, I'm Jason Hooper from FixYourGut.com, and today I'm going to be reacting to some clickbait that I clicked on today from a health site called Eat This Not That. Now, we all are affected by the clickbait. That's sort of what it's designed to do. So the people who are marketing that and the people who wrote that, good job, you got me. So I'm going to take you guys through this article from eatthis.com, and the title of the article is Drinking Habits That Are Shortening Your Life, According to Science. You always have to preface that it's according to science. It's just not eating habits that people just made up someplace. No, we have scientific research that I'm sure is going to back up their claims. So why did I click on this? Well, I think it has something to do with the phraseology. Habits caught my attention, and lifespan, something to do with that triggered my algorithm, and so I clicked on it. Hey, let's see what this is all about. Normally when I approach something like this, I approach it with a lot of skepticism, because a lot of them are nonsense. So here we go. Drinking habits that are shortening your life according to science. Yes, you can have too much of a good thing. When you start a diet and begin monitoring your nutrient intake, you most likely spend a lot more time focusing on what to eat rather than what to drink. When you start a diet and begin monitoring your nutrient intake, you most likely spend a lot more time focusing on what to eat rather than what you drink. We even hear talk of all the good home juicing and a daily smoothie can do when it comes to losing weight or detoxing. Even if we pay far less attention to what drinks enter our body on a daily basis, this element of nutrition can't get swept under the rug and forgotten about, which is why, if you're not careful, you could be creating drinking habits, shortening your life. Shortening your life. Shortening your life. We should investigate this and see what's going on. Trying to figure out which drinks really run your health into the ground might surprise you. But have no fear, as long as you avoid these drinking habits shortening your life, you should be on track to lead a long and healthy life. So let's pay attention, because some of these claims are pretty strong. All right, so let's go through this. We're scrolling down here. First, we end up with coffee. Don't drink more than 4 cups of coffee a day. That can't be good. We scroll down a little bit more. Excessive alcohol. Yeah, I don't see too many health sites making the claim that you should be drinking more alcohol. So yeah, excessive alcohol, let's cut that out. So coffee, less than 4 cups, or 4 cups or fewer rather. That should be okay, I guess. Alcohol, yeah, that's probably a good thing. Drinking a daily soda, yeah, probably not best, and they pretty much focus here on the sugar content in the soda. And we scroll down a little bit more, your daily juice. Yeah, daily juice, again, they're worried about the sugar intake. I think they do make a good point here that when you're thinking about your diet, there's a lot of caloric intake that you might not be accounting for in some of these drinks. You're just drinking a lot of sugar and it doesn't register the same as if you ate something with the same amount of sugar in it, like an orange, rather than drinking orange juice. Perhaps also not having that fiber in your stomach from the orange might make you feel less full, so that could be a contributing factor to calories that you're consuming and not really registering in your gut. All right, this next one says downing 3 glasses of milk a day. Not just drinking 3 glasses of milk, but downing them. Gosh, this website has a lot of ads. I see double-click stuff everywhere. All right, so the last one is the one that I think is the most controversial and the one that I'm going to dig into the most for this video. And it reads, if you want to bulk up, drinking protein shakes just seems like an easy way to do so. However, according to a study featured in The Independent, these drinks have the opposite effect. Increasing your protein intake to super high levels in a day decrease the quality of life in later years and leads to an early death. The risk of mortality stems from added BCAA, that's branched chain amino acid, supplements, meaning that if your drink gets made with this type of powder, you are inadvertently putting yourself in unnecessary danger. All right, so there's not going to be a protein shake on the market that has added BCAAs, or at least I hope there's not, because BCAAs are incredibly bitter and it's going to be awful to drink. So normally when you have a protein powder and it's marketed to have BCAAs, it's talking about the whole protein content and different forms, different amino acids that make up the branched chain amino acids, not added BCAAs. So we need to point out that difference right off the bat. All right, let's go and check out this independent article. It's always a good idea when you're reading stuff to check the references and see where they're getting the information from, because you need to know, all this stuff. So it's coming from the independent, and it's always a good idea to check the references and read through them, because a lot of the times they don't necessarily report the same information. Stuff, it's like playing a giant game of telephone. Everything, kind of gets lost the further you go. So now we're going from one clickbaity type website to another clickbaity type website. When websites kind of reference each other like that, it's an SEO play. So it's like, we'll feature your articles and you feature ours, and then the Google algorithm sees those links and sort of advances them in the whole search engine thing. And so it's like this big game they play. So we're going to the independent. Drinking too many protein shakes could lead to an increased risk of obesity and a reduced lifespan, a new study has claimed. Well, at least this time there's a study and they're not just linking to another clickbait site. So let's go and see what's going on here eventually. But they go on to say, researchers from the University of Sydney's Charles Perkins Center carried out an investigation to determine the impact excessive consumption of branched chain amino acids, BCAAs, has on the body. So it's good. At least this time they defined what BCAAs are. So we'll get into this. BCAA supplements are often consumed in the form of powder, which is then added water to make a shake. No, do not consume raw BCAA powder. It's awful. If you can drink raw BCAA powder, that's awesome. Kudos to you. That's amazing. No, these are whey protein shakes. They make other sorts of protein shake, pea protein for the vegetarians, and maybe collagen protein. But people aren't just dumping in BCAA powders into their shake and drink. I hope not. If you do, if you got no taste buds, maybe you've lost your sense of taste and you need to go get tested for what. But anyway, yeah, it's also drinking and consuming BCAAs straight. That's not going to be good for your digestion. That's going to be awful. It's going to have a huge osmotic effect, and you're going to be on the toilet for a long time. Published in journal Nature Metabolism. Wait, what? Published in journal. We're missing a definite article here. The study found that while BCAAs help to build muscle, they can also negatively impact an individual's temperament, cause weight gain, and lead to a shortened lifespan. So now we're adding in the mix. It's going to affect your temperament. Okay, so this is crazy. All right, let's go straight to Nature Metabolism, which is not a periodical that I'm fondly aware of. So let's get into this. All right, so we get into this periodical, and I had to use a different account so that I could get the full text. A lot of times they link to the article and it's just an abstract, and you read the abstract, and the abstract can have very different information than the rest of the study. So it's important to read the entire study. The first thing that kind of concerns me is that after the abstract, they kind of have some background information. I guess that's not concerning all by itself, but then they list the results first before they talk about what they did in the study. Most of the time, what they do is they talk about what they seek to observe. They talk about the design of their experiment, how they're going to do it, and they set up everything in advance. You don't want to have researchers that already have their conclusion drawn in advance, because the outcome of the study is going to be affected by that bias. A good researcher just asks a question, makes an observation, and just sets something up to prove or disprove a hypothesis. Hopefully they don't go into it with these biases, because it can change the way they interpret the data. They want to be as objective as possible. So I go on reading the results section of this study, and it's sort of misleading in the abstract, because the conclusions that are drawn are basically, if we're consuming too many branch chain amino acids, well, we're shortening our lifespan. So it kind of surprises me here, because the first thing I start reading is this is not a human study at all. It's based on mice, okay? Not humans, mice. And the next thing I see is that these mice are killed off at 15 months. Okay, so we get all these mice, and then we're terminating their lifespan unnaturally by euthanasia. So we're not talking about observing the lifespan of these mice at all, because they're killing them all. The other thing that they did in that sentence is they put an or. Like, we killed them off, or what? They never say what happens. All right, so, like, did these mice escape? Did they outsmart the researchers? Did they just vanish? I don't understand what happened. Where are these scientists from in the first place? It looks like they're from the University of Sydney. All right, so let's break down what we just read and work from the reverse order of things, so that we can kind of see what's going on. So the first thing that I want to point out is that we have rodents outsmarting their captors. We can't overlook this, okay? So we got rodents that are outsmarting their captors, and then the ones that aren't outsmarted, so that's the or, we kill them at 15 months. So working back from this, they're attempting to prove from the tissue samples amino acid ratios. And then working backwards from the amino acid ratios, we're looking to see how many of those are free branch chain amino acids. And then we're supposed to infer by this that we have a 33% reduction in lifespan, apparently. Because of the branch chain amino acid increase. Okay, so we're making the connection from either rodents becoming rodents outsmarting their captors or killed off, to amino acid ratios, particularly concerning BCAAs, and a 33% reduction in lifespan. How do we get from escaped rodents to we're going to die 33% earlier? I have no idea. I have no idea how we can possibly make this connection given the parameters of this study. It's insane. Let's just take this conclusion and play it out. So, like, let's say you were planning on living to be 100, and you consume too many BCAAs. Well, through that process, now you're only going to live to be 66. So you've just shaved off what, 33 years of your life by consuming protein shakes, according to this study. That's a lot. That's a lot of years. Okay, the average life expectancy for a white male such as myself living in the United States is 78.6. So how does this play out? So if I was supposed to live to be 78.6 and then I drink too many protein shakes, and I do drink protein shakes from time to time because I think that they help with my athletic recovery. So now I'm only going to live to be 51.9 years old. Let's just round it up to 52. Geez, guys, I better start making some more of these videos because it doesn't look like I have a whole lot of time left here. So look forward to a lot more content from me, because apparently I'm going to be dead at 52 because I drink protein shakes after my workout. All right, so let's get back to this article. So we have researchers from Sydney's Charles Perkins Center. So who's Charles Perkins? Let's take a look here. It's an activist. Great. Why can't we have activists for quality research? I want to see somebody who's an activist for research that makes sense, and I would definitely donate to that cause. Let's see some of that. On the high level of BCAAs in the blood can disrupt sleep by causing decreased levels of the happiness chemical serotonin, which aids with sleep. Okay, serotonin. Did you know that there's double the amount of serotonin that's produced in the gut than that's produced in the brain? Digestion is extremely important for serotonin. The amino acids that you consume play a role, but not as much as your digestive process and being able to fine-tune your gut and make sure that the right amount of serotonin is being produced. So basically, you have these amino acids that go through a biochemical change and a conversion process to turn into serotonin neurotransmitters, and all that's great, but it's not significantly to the same effect as what happens in the gut through the microbes that reside there. All right, let's go on. Social media stars give bad diet and fitness advice. Okay, some of them do. Some of them actually give fairly good advice. It's often good to look at the media stars and see what they look like, what they've been able to achieve. Some of it's genetic, yes, but I mean, if they look good and they're following their own advice, there's got to be something there, right? Social media stars give bad diet and fitness advice, researchers say. For the study, the researchers tested the effects of dietary BCAAs and other essential amino acids on the bodies of mice. Bodies of mice. Okay. The mice were fed either double the typical intake of BCAAs for life, the standard amount, half the normal intake, or a fifth. The scientists found that the mice whose BCAA intake was increased twofold consumed more food, which in turn led to obesity and a shorter lifespan. Okay, I could see how mice that ended up eating more would end up becoming obese, but how do we know that they had a shorter lifespan? Because they were euthanized and or escaped from the lab. So one thing that I mentioned beforehand is that consuming raw branch-chain amino acids, which are amino acids in their isolated form, not amino acids that are in a protein chain. The issue with that is that it has an osmotic effect in the gut. What does that mean? It draws in water. So as we're drawing in water into the gut, water is then flushing out these branch-chain amino acid isolates that are acting as an irritant in the gut. Body's flushing it out and everything else out too. So that's going to affect your satiety. You're going to be hungry after that because all of the foodstuffs that you just ate got washed out. So yes, you're probably going to consume more. Yes, you're also probably going to have leaky gut because the tight junctions in the epithelial cells have to open up to allow that water to go through. Well, if water's going through, then endotoxin can come out, which is a huge contributing cause to metabolic disorders. So you got the fluids coming in, you got toxins coming out. That's not a good thing. I also want to point out that the mice were not being fed protein shakes. They were being fed BCAA powder, which is not the same thing, and it's not the same thing that the article claims either. All right, let's go on. While diets high in protein and low in carbohydrates were shown to be beneficial for reproductive function, they had detrimental effects for health in mid-late life and also led to a shortened lifespan. Did these mice even reproduce? And they didn't die of natural causes. I just don't see how we can make that claim. What this new research has shown is that amino acid balance is important. It's best to vary sources of protein to ensure you're getting the best amino acid balance. Yeah, you want to vary not just your proteins, you want to have a varied diet all the time, but not because of the amino acid balance, it's because of the microbiome. Supplementation of BCAAs resulted in high levels of BCAAs in the blood, which competed with tryptophan for the transport to the brain. So tryptophan is fairly rate limited, and tryptophan to 5-HTP is also a highly conserved process. So we're talking about blood level or perhaps brain level conversion of tryptophan to 5-HTP to serotonin, and we're saying that branched chain amino acids are somehow competing with this process, but it's a lot tighter regulator than that, first of all, and second of all, it's not the biggest factor of serotonin in the first place because, like I said earlier, lots and lots of serotonin made in the gut, not nearly as much made anywhere else in the body. Tryptophan is the sole precursor for the hormone serotonin, which is often called the happiness chemical for its mood-enhancing effects and its role in promoting sleep. But serotonin does more than this, and therein lay the problem. Therein lay the problem. I guess that's Australian, because we would say therein lies the problem, to be grammatically correct in American English. You can think of the word lay and lie like sit and sat. So he sat down, he laid down. You tell somebody to sit down, lie down. So therein sits the problem, or therein sat the problem. I don't know. That's a weird one. Low protein diet may prevent breast cancer resisting treatment. What? Decreased levels of serotonin in the brain leads to a potent signal to increase appetite. The serotonin decrease caused by excess BCAA intake led to massive overeating in our mice, which became hugely obese and lived shorter lives. How do we know they lived shorter lives? You killed them all, or they escaped. We don't know that. It makes no sense. BCAAs are a group of these essential amino acids, leucine, isoleucine, and valine, most commonly found in food items such as red meat and dairy. Yeah, they're found everywhere. That's why they're the branched chain amino acids, okay? They're found all over the place. Are they high in concentrations in meat? Yes, they're also higher in concentration in you, because you're made up of meat too. Whey protein, one of the most popular forms of protein in the fitness industry, contains high levels of BCAAs. Yeah, it does, but those BCAAs are in a protein chain. They're not just free-floating around. Not even hydrolyzed whey proteins are going to have free-floating BCAAs. They're going to be in peptides. Dr. Rosalind Ribeiro, a qualified dietitian and public health nutritionist from the University of Sydney, outlined the importance of consuming protein from a variety of different sources such as chicken, fish, eggs, beans, lentils, and nuts. Yeah, great advice. Eat lots of different types of protein. It's important to vary protein sources in order to get a variety of essential amino acids through a healthy and balanced diet rich in fibrae. I think she means fiber. Those Aussies and their crazy spellings. Vitamins and minerals. All right, so let's get back to the source article, the clickbait article that I originally went to in the first place from Eat This Not That. So they go on to say, increasing your protein intake to super high levels in a day decreases your quality of life in later years and leads to an early death. The risk of mortality stems from added BCAA supplements, meaning that if your drink gets made with this type of powder, you're inadvertently putting yourself in unnecessary danger. Okay, they're not adding BCAA powders to your protein shakes because it's so bitter. I'm telling you, it's not happening, okay? It's a marketing thing. They're saying it contains BCAAs because those BCAAs are in whey protein as part of a chain, not as isolates. According to the Harvard Medical School, no one should get more than 10% of their calories from a protein source. So a protein source or from all protein sources? This is kind of confusing. So, because you could have a lot of different protein sources, and if your consumption of whey protein shakes is more than 10% of your total caloric intake, that might be an issue, unless you really like Soylent, because I guess they're okay with that. So let's go to this Harvard Medical School website that they link and see what they're talking about here. All right, so the first thing I want to look at for this Harvard Medical School site is that, like, they're charging for premium content here. Harvard, what's the deal? Why are we charging for premium content? You don't charge your students enough in tuition to cover the bills? Harvard already has a pretty substantial members portal. We call that the student body at Harvard Medical. $64,984 in tuition, not including fees, just in tuition. And now they're going to charge people for premium content on their site. Wow. I love Harvard Medical School, but that seems excessive. Also, this was in 2020. Let's see, was Harvard Medical School virtual or in person in 2020? They were virtual, so that's a lot of money for online college. All right, so let's get into this article. It is entitled, When It Comes to Protein, How Much is Too Much? It starts off saying, you've probably heard the claims by now. Here's a diet that's delicious, easy to stick with, and guaranteed to help you lose weight effortlessly. Or perhaps it's just supposed to build muscle, protect your joints, or prevent Alzheimer's. Whatever the diet and whatever the claim, there's a good chance that it is indeed too good to be true. Yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot of fad diets that are out there. There's a lot of bunk diets, a lot of bunk nutrition advice. Like they said, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. Here's why that's true. It's because diet is part of it when it comes to having a good lifestyle, but there's way more to it than that on the hierarchy. And it basically all boils down to your values. Actually, I have this infographic right here. I have this infographic from another podcast that I'm doing later today, but we have this hierarchy of values, and if you don't fix your values in your lifestyle and you don't have good technique in the gym, your recovery stinks. Well, all your programming, whatever you're doing as far as your fitness routine, your diet, and all that stuff isn't going to work, okay? You have to fix the big things first. That's how it works. And I'm sorry to be so controversial, and people are probably going to hate me for saying this, but hey, I mean, it is what it is. All right, so then it goes on to say, in recent years, high-protein diets are among the most popular, whether the protein is consumed as a supplement, protein shakes for bodybuilders, or simply a larger than usual portion of a balanced diet, such as the Zone, Atkins, or Paleo diets. I would argue that the Atkins diet is definitely more of a high fat, moderate protein, low carb diet, and paleo diets can basically be anything as long as you stick to foods that they claim were eaten by people during the Paleolithic period, so they tend to avoid grain. But you can definitely eat a lot of carbohydrates on the paleo diet if that's your jam. Not your literal, jam, jelly jam, but if that's your thing. The zone, I think, is one of the diets that actually pins down your macronutrients, and I don't necessarily think it's high protein. I think it's a pretty good indicator of how much protein you should be eating on a zone type diet. If you're going to be, put it this way, if you're going to be dialing in your macronutrients in your diet, the zone is not a bad place to start. Perhaps you're curious about one of these diets or already tried them. Did you ever wonder whether too much protein might be a problem? How much protein do you need? Yeah, that's a good question. How much protein do you need? Not just how much protein is optimal, but how much protein do you actually need to survive? Protein is essential for life. It's a building block of every human cell and is involved in the vital biochemical functions of the human body. It's particularly important in growth, development, and tissue repair. Protein is one of the 3 major macronutrients, along with carbohydrates and fat. Yeah, they seem to be making a pretty good case for protein. I'm waiting to get to the part where it's killing you. So consuming enough protein is required to stave off malnutrition. It may also be important to preserve muscle mass and strength as we age, and in recent years, some have advocated a higher protein diet to rev up metabolism to make it easier to lose weight, though success in this regard is highly variable. I think it's highly variable, but I think that also has to do, there are definitely some confounding variables like your physical activity and also how much protein you're consuming and also the other micronutrient ratios. But yeah, so the claim they're saying is higher protein equals weight loss. Maybe. One of the reasons is why protein is thermogenic in the body. So that's one of the variables that could be used for weight loss, is to increase your protein intake to rev up your metabolism, just like is stated in the article. Right after they got done saying that high protein diets are a fad and you shouldn't try them and disregard all these celebrities that are claiming otherwise, they say, yeah, well, sometimes it actually works. So, what's the ideal amount of protein? Let's read on. The ideal amount of protein that you should consume each day is a bit uncertain. Commonly quoted recommendations are 56 grams per day for men, 46 grams per day for women. What? $56 grams a day for men, 46 grams a day for women? I mean, maybe we're not thinking about this the right way. Maybe we're thinking about small children. So let's see, a 3-year-old is going to weigh around 30 pounds. So let's say it's probably more closer to that for a 3-year-old. Maybe we're not talking about adults here. We're talking about small children. That's the only way these numbers could make sense at all. So commonly quoted, okay. I've not seen those quotes, but you could get 46 grams per day of protein in 1 serving of low-fat Greek yogurt, a 4-ounce serving of lean chicken breast, and a bowl of cereal with skim milk. Yeah, that's all you're going to eat in a day is, you know, a serving of low-fat Greek yogurt. So how much is in a serving? It doesn't say. And then a 4-ounce chicken breast. That's like not a lot of meat there. And then also some cereal with skim milk. That's what you're going to eat in a day. You're going to eat Greek yogurt, a tiny piece of chicken, and a bowl of cereal. That is not a balanced diet. You cannot eat that and be healthy. They must be kidding themselves. A weight-based recommendation, daily allowance, RDA, of 0.8 grams per kilogram of body weight for a 140-pound person. That comes to 51 grams of protein a day. This is interesting. So we have grams per kg of body weight. This makes me think, where have I heard this before? Seems like I've seen some kind of Netflix documentary peddling this nonsense. And then what about this guy who wrote some sort of book called like How Not to Die or some sort of inflammatory title? And then, yeah, we seem to have had Bill Clinton being put on some sort of weight loss program for his heart by Dean Ornish or something or another, who got his information from Richard Fleming. And Richard Fleming was an interesting case, and I could do a whole video series about this because Richard Fleming was peddling this nonsense, this low protein for heart health nonsense for a long time. And, you know, he did his own research, he did his own studies because he was a cardiologist in Omaha, Nebraska. And he was actually convicted. He pled guilty to, you know, in charge of medical fraud and another one of mail fraud. Why mail fraud? Well, because he was billing insurance companies for these heart scans that he wasn't actually doing himself. He was just saying, oh, we repaired all of this heart disease with our low protein diets, high carbohydrate diets, and the heart was just fixing itself. But he made up all of his data, and so, you know, ended up getting convicted on this stuff. But people still cite him all the time, including Ornish, including Greger, and including Esseltine. You know, all of these scientists, doctors, whatever they are, that are promoting this stuff. You know, it's all coming from medical fraud. And, you know, here's the criminal case report to prove it. Active people, especially those who are trying to build muscle mass, may need more. Yeah, you think? Based on percent of calories for an active adult, about 10% of calories should come from protein. So now it's not saying it's coming from a protein source, but from protein, period. Okay? So this ratio is going to be significant because we've got, let's say that we're doing about 50 grams of protein per day. And this is our protein content. So what are we left with? We're left with our fats, and we're left with our carbohydrates. So if we are a 140-pound person, like the article describes, let's just go ahead and say that our fat's going to be somewhere around 50 grams also. Some moderate fat diet. And then your carbohydrate intake is going to have to be something like, for, you know, they're saying a 140-pound person is an average weight, which is kind of ridiculous. Maybe for a 5'2" woman, that would be appropriate weight. But for a grown male, you're probably looking at closer to 200 pounds of lean muscle mass of what a human should look like if they properly develop their bodies. Anyway, 140-pound person should probably be eating around 2,000 calories a day. So let's just say we're going to do what, like 480 grams of carbohydrates. So this is supposed to be your balanced diet. Okay, and maybe I'm getting confused on the fat to carbohydrate ratio, but this does not look balanced or healthy to me. Pay more attention to the type of protein in your diet rather than the amount. For example, moderating consumption of red meat, increasing healthier protein sources such as salmon, yogurt, or beans. Okay, so again, you know, we're sort of demonizing red meat. Red meat's unhealthy because of its protein content, not necessarily because usually they go after red meat for saturated fats, but you know, yogurt, beans, salmon, the proteins in salmon are going to look very similar to the proteins in red meat. I got news for you. Some experts suggest that these recommendations are all wrong and we should be consuming more protein, up to twice the standard recommendations. Okay, so if the standard recommendations are around 50 and twice of that is 100, we're still pretty low on protein. And I know there's people out there that are going to be saying like, oh, well, I only eat 1 gram of protein a day and I'm totally fine. Okay, good for you. And you know, there's also going to be that 30 bananas a day guy who eats literally 30 bananas a day is all he eats. Like, that's a balanced diet. You know, going to have some massive SIBO after that diet. But, you know, apparently he's doing great. You know, he can go and cycle around and have fun and do everything he needs to do, eating 30 bananas a day, as if that's sustainable. And it's like, yeah, that's great. You know, you can do all that stuff. But I would be shocked if any of these people could barbell squat twice their body weight. Can you do it? I mean, it's one thing to do submaximal contractions of riding a bike around all day, but can you get your body to lift heavy weights? And there's a case to be made for having strength. And again, that's a video for another time, but you know, it's good to build up your base strength because, you know, there's lots of times where you need to use strength. So let's take cycling, for instance, right? Each time you push the pedal, it's not your maximum output, but it is a percentage of your maximum muscle contraction. So the stronger you get, the more you're able to contract. Well, that means the less percentage of your maximal output is going to be used to pedal that bike around, making you faster and giving you greater endurance. If you're eating 30 bananas a day, that's not a good diet to increase your strength, and you're not going to be as good of a cyclist, period. So yeah, we're going to double the recommended 50 grams. Yeah, at least double, maybe triple or quadruple, depending on your fitness level. Okay, and if you're a sedentary person, I would encourage you not to be. I would encourage you to become an active human being. It's not good to be sedentary, so we're not going to start from the basis of, I'm already unhealthy. How do I optimize my health by eating less protein? Let's develop better lifestyle habits and get out and be active and eat more protein because you're going to need that protein to recover from your activity. Now, not everybody has to go out and be a power lifter or whatever in the gym, but do something, you know, don't sit around too much. It's bad for you. And I know these comments are controversial. I know I'm going to get a lot of hate, but listen, it is what it is. We're meant to be active creatures. Still, others claim that the average American diet already contains too much protein. Read more about the thinking of experts on this subject in the summary of 2 protein summits in 2007 and 2013, organized to discuss the role of protein in human health and to explore the misperception that Americans consume protein. I would like to go listen to those protein summits and hear what they have to say because, yeah, I don't think that too many people are over-consuming protein. Note, these meetings were sponsored in part by animal-based food industry groups. They were sponsored in part by animal-based. They were sponsored in part by animal-based food industry groups. So the bias in this article is really starting to come out here on that kind of stuff, because their research is clearly influenced by vegan activists on YouTube and Netflix. To be fair, there are non-vegans who have these like lifespan diets that encourage low protein consumption and, ironically, branched chain amino acid consumption, and they get that wrong there because, you know, people like Dr. Atea, who are in favor of long-term fasting, taking metformin to increase lifespan, reducing protein intake. They get it wrong when it comes to rapamycin, and again, this is content for another video, but when BCAA promotes rapamycin, well then it's actually stopping the autophagy process that could, not necessarily, but could end up defeating cancer cells naturally, or making cancer treatments work better. But yeah, I think they get a lot of this stuff wrong, and I'll probably make another video at some point explaining why I believe that they're wrong. Can too much protein be harmful? The short answer is yes. As with most things in life, there can be too much of a good thing, and if you eat too much protein, there may be a price to pay. For example, people that eat very high protein diets have a higher risk of kidney stones. Also, a high protein diet that contains a lot of red meat and higher amounts of saturated fat, there it is, there's the saturated fat, might lead to a higher risk of heart disease and colon cancer, while another high protein diet rich in plant-based proteins may not carry similar risks. So there's this study where they have these cyclic amines that were originated in the gut from eating red meat, and the way they did this is they fed rodents. Again, it's a mice study. They fed them like 1,000 times what any normal human would ever consume and say, oh, red meat causes colon cancer. So, you know, you make these claims and you just keep recycling them and stuff. Red meat is not bad for you. But yeah, kidney stones, you don't want kidney stones. If you have other related health risks related to too much protein consumption, and it goes beyond kidney stones too, you got to deal with those issues. One of the ways to deal with it may be to reduce your protein intake. Maybe it might be to reduce your oxalates or reduce your ammonia or control your ammonia. Do something to control the side effects of protein intake. But again, that's a video for another time. But there are other choices out there other than just to eat 50 grams of protein a day. I also like their language here, like it may lead to. They do a couple of different times where it's like, amounts of saturated fat might lead to a higher risk of heart disease and colon cancer, while a high protein diet rich in plant-based proteins may not carry similar risks. So they sort of go a passive route and portraying this information, and they don't do it just once, they do it twice. So when it comes to protein, how much is too much? It's hard to provide a specific answer since so much is still uncertain, and the experts themselves don't agree. Experts? This is Harvard Medical School. Aren't you guys the experts? When I think of quality education, I think of Harvard. I think of Harvard as being the premier institution for education on this planet. Students are paying $65,000 for tuition in your medical program, and you can't figure out who the experts are? You're the experts, right? However, for the average person who is not an elite athlete or heavily involved in bodybuilding, listen, you can be physically fit and physically active and not have to be an elite athlete or a bodybuilder. There are other types of human beings out there that like to keep themselves healthy and fit that don't necessarily follow into those two categories. You don't necessarily need to be either a sedentary desk jockey or, you know, a competitive cyclist on the Tour de France. Like, there's a range of things that you could fall into. It's probably best to aim for no more than 2 grams per kilogram. That would be about 125 grams per day for a 140-pound person. Okay, that actually seems reasonable. It seems a lot more reasonable. I would probably recommend a little bit more than that, but now we're in the ballpark. So what was all this stuff about, like, oh, it's going to cut your lifespan in third and all this other kind of stuff? Like, what in the world? New information could change our thinking about the maximum safe amount. What about the minimum safe amount? But until we know more about safety, risks, and benefits of high-protein diets, this seems like a reasonable recommendation. Yeah, I mean, it's a lot more reasonable than the 50 gram a day. That's for darn sure. You know, we're a lot closer. So what about all of this mess at the beginning? I don't understand. Is it purely for sensationalism? Are we just trying to appease the vegan communities? And listen, like, I have nothing against vegans. There's plenty of good reasons to be vegan. The vegan diet's way better than the American standard diet. But you can still be a vegan and get plenty of protein in if you do it the right way. And I've had clients that I've coached that are vegans, and they're living incredibly healthy lifestyles, and they're doing absolutely great. Their teeth aren't falling out, and they're not having hormone issues or any of this other stuff. But yeah, they are eating quite a bit of protein, way more than 10% of their total caloric intake. All right, so we've gone from 0.8 grams per kilogram to 2 grams per kilogram. So a 140-pound person, let's say we'll just average the male and female thing out, going from 50 grams to 125 grams. So their total caloric, based on the 2,000 calorie diet recommendations, they've gone from a 10% of their calories coming from protein to about 25% of their kilocalories coming from protein. That's a huge difference, and in my opinion, that's a huge difference in a positive direction. Whether you're an elite athlete or a couch potato, you're going to have a lot of benefits doing this. Again, let's take all of the religion out of this equation. Whether you're a vegan or you're paleo or whatever tribe that you fall into, it doesn't matter. This is a good recommendation. But again, I just want to point out that this 140 pound person, they're 63 kilos. Okay, like in judo, for instance, the 63 kilo division is going to be like one of the lightest weight classes that's around, and it's also after they cut weight. So we're talking about very tiny people here. So when they say eat 125 grams a day for somebody who's already very undersized, like very small human beings. All right, so how's this going to affect the macronutrient ratio that we have if we up our game to 125 grams of protein rather than 50? So let's look at our ratios here. So we're going to have 125 grams of protein. Let's keep fat consistent from the last one, 50 grams of fat. And then to equal our 2,000 calorie diet, we're going to have, let's say, about 280 grams of carbohydrates. So doesn't this look more reasonable? Doesn't this pie chart look a little bit more balanced than we were talking about before? I think so. What's a protein lover to do? If you want to maintain a high protein diet, the details matter. Find out from your doctor if you have any health conditions such as kidney disease that might make such a diet risky. Yeah, that seems like great advice. Talk to your doctor and see if you're one of those few people in the world that has to consume 50 grams of protein or fewer in a day, or else your kidneys are going to fail for some reason. But I promise you there's not many people like that out there. But do talk to your doctor, and if you're in some of those health risks, don't just talk about reducing the protein. Let's also have the conversation about how we can lessen the kidney stones and still eat enough protein to be an active, healthy human being, which is, in my opinion, important. Get your protein from healthy sources such as low-fat dairy products, fish, nuts, and beans, lean chicken and turkey, Avoid protein sources that contain highly processed carbohydrates and saturated fat. Spread your protein consumption across all of your meals throughout the day. All right, that's sort of a myth. You have to spread your protein out all over the day. We see even that in some fitness circles. Now, there can be some issues with fermentation in the gut with protein. You don't want your protein to ferment in the gut. So if you're eating so much of it that it's fermented and your gut's bad to begin with, that's not good. So take care of that problem for sure. But other than that, you can digest lots of protein at a time, and it's not going to be a problem for you. So that, again, that's sort of a myth. Whether you eat it all at once or spread out through the day, it doesn't really matter. I don't recommend grazing. So the people who are eating like a protein bar or a protein shake every hour or something like that, that's completely unnecessary. I would also make the argument that quality protein sources do matter. I just maybe don't agree on which sources are quality and which ones are not as much quality, and not necessarily based on the branched chain amino acid content, but how easily could we digest these proteins when these proteins are in their complete form? Can we digest them easily? What form are they in? And the reason why we digest meat and dairy so well is because they're in a form that we can break down through pepsin and peptase and the stomach biles that we have. We can break those down, convert them into amino acids, and use them to build other things. So if we're consuming a lot of lectins or a lot of other proteins that are in different forms that are in legumes, for instance, those are a lot harder to digest, and they also create a lot more problems in the gut to begin with. So it's going to be very difficult to make the argument that, hey, legumes are a better source than red meat. From a pure protein perspective, red meat is a much better protein source. Yes, it does have some saturated fat in there, but you do need some saturated fats. About a third of your fats potentially should be coming from saturated fats, because, if you look inside the body, about a third is saturated, about a third is polyunsaturated, and a third is monounsaturated. So if that's what we're made up of, why aren't we eating and consuming fats that are in the same forms if that's what our body is using? Does that make sense? Excessive amount of saturated fat is bad, but are we at that point? We haven't had that conversation yet. That means no red meat at all. What types of cuts of red meat are you eating? Are you just eating ribeyes all day long? You got the 30 banana a day guy. I want to see the 30 ribeye a day guy who eats nothing but ribeyes all day. We'll see. We'll see which one of those balanced diet people die first. Another thing I want to warn people about are collagen proteins, which are easily fermentable in the gut. And seafood, particularly shellfish, can contain proteins that are easily fermentable in the gut. And if you're overdoing it with those protein sources, I don't consider those to be quality protein for your 125 gram, if that's the number you're going with. If that's your goal, and a lot of this is coming from collagen proteins or seafood, that a lot of it's going to ferment, and I don't recommend that. So I hope you enjoyed my video. We all fall for clickbait sometimes, and I appreciate you following me down these rabbit holes and dissecting all of this information and seeing how we go from clickbait maybe to something reasonable. So if you like this, hit the like button. If you're not a subscriber, I would encourage you to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell. Again, I'm going to be putting out a lot more content because, according to these studies, I'm gonna die at the age of 52, and so I'm got a limited amount of time left with y'all, so I'm not gonna waste it. I'm gonna put out videos all the time. Make sure you subscribe so you can get notified when they are released. Thanks. Have a good one.